Yeah, man, it's been quite a while.
Yeah, it really has. Look, I think I saw you in Dreamgirls, wasn't it? When was that?
But that was in Cardiff, wasn't it? When was that?
That was
I
ages
finished.
ago. I've done another contract since then, and I've been home for like 8 months.
Yeah, I finished on Dreamgirls last January.
Yeah, because you were just finishing the run when I saw you.
Man, so it's got to be. It's at least it's over a year.
That's crazy. I don't feel like it's been that long. Maybe because we like slightly chat in between.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. By the way, I've got to say sorry about this wallpaper. It's awful. Backdrop is horrendous. It's like
Um,
we've been meaning to read it. I'm in my living room because my little lad's asleep upstairs, and like we've been meaning to decorate this since we moved in, and we just haven't had chance. So you've got this weird
oh mate,
tree thing at the moment.
I don't mind it.
So that's good. That's fine.
Got my like
I've got
drum.
nothing drum related. No, that's good. At least that's drum related. I've got nothing that's drum related in this room at all. So it's like I'm just kind of sat here,
Well, at
basically.
least you're here, mate. That's the main.
Oh yeah, it's all good. But
Thanks
yeah,
for doing this first and foremost.
anytime.
So to give you a bit of background, I think that you are guest number 15, which is amazing. I've been very lucky. People have been really good to give me their time. It kind of started out of a need for I think I started it during COVID, I think. I was like sick of reading these like musician magazines or drum magazines or whatever they were. And like all they were asking these like pro touring players or pe players who like were really in good jobs,
Yeah,
what drumsticks they were using, as if that's gonna like make a
yeah.
difference as to how well you play, And I was
Like
just so
all the
sick.
cliches.
Yeah, like what drum skins you use. It's like, oh God, like who cares? Like it's about
Yeah,
like how you play, not like what you're using. So
yeah,
I was like, well, maybe I could, and I was in a position then, I think, where I really wanted to know. I think I started it before my master's actually. I really wanted to know kind of what it took to become like a pro touring player and to kind of get the jobs that I'd always like dreamed of getting. So I started reaching out to people, and at first they would like it would just be me and them. We'd have a phone call conversation, and then they would give me all this amazing insight. And then I think I was like, well, like this information is so useful.
mm,
Everyone can benefit from it if you kind of like have a platform to do it from. So that's how the whole thing started.
yeah.
As a bit of background. So yeah, you are number 15, which is amazing. We're really, I mean, and you are, yeah, I like the last time I did one was, um, yeah, probably before I met you, I think, which would have been like ages and ages ago.
Oh God.
Because the ships don't obviously have good enough Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course. You have to wait, don't you, until you're in a place
yeah,
where you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, we obviously, for the benefit of everyone that's going to listen or watch, we met actually well before I came to see you on Dreamgirls. We actually met on Avita, didn't we, when you came to the
That
Phoenix?
was that was at the fit. That was my first thing in London. Actually, that was my
Was
first
it?
show. Yeah. Well, I've only done. There's been two contracts that were mine in London. One of them was Avita, and the other one we'll probably speak about it later. But then another one was a show called On Your Feet at the Coliseum. But yeah, Vita at the Phoenix was the first one. So I
Yeah.
think you were working there, weren't you? You
Yeah,
asked.
I was studying my
Yeah.
master's and I was working in front of house, and you very, very kindly let me come and sit in the pits with you.
Oh man, you couldn't bring
And
better.
I just think I like couldn't get over like the level of musicianship, and it kind of was a real good insight into kind of like what it takes to really be playing on a West End show and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
It's a closed circuit for a reason. The players that have to do those gigs, you have to be really, really good. So kudos to you,
It's
my friend.
oh, thank you, man. I think it's just a very niche skill set. I think because you have to do a lot of things that some people some guys just don't do. So I have a lot of people message me and stuff about asking me how I got into it and stuff and what you need to do and things. And it's just like, well, can you read music? I'm like, well, no. Right,
Yeah.
okay, kind of a given. There's some cases where you don't have to, but 99% of the time you kind of need to be. And
Yeah.
it's just little things like that, really. But yeah, this is why I really like having sit-ins because it was before I got into the whole touring thing and this kind of level of work. I'd always find it really interesting if people were posting on social media like their photos of like these pro gigs. I'm like, oh man, how does that even happen? Like,
Yeah.
how does it work? Like, you know what I mean? So, I kind of really enjoy the sitting thing because it's interesting for people, and also like if you've been on a show for a year, doing 8 shows a week, it's kind of interesting to have somebody else in and watch because you have to concentrate again then. So it's
Well,
all
you
good.
did that day anyway. You absolutely I can remember. And you have now, I mean, your touring and West End experience. We're talking Evita, Dreamgirls, Saturday Night Fever, Wicked, Frozen, Hairspray, West Side Story, and that's just like a few. And I'm sure
Yeah,
there are going to be many, many more. You are literally a perfect example to me, I think, of like how to play those shows. Because obviously I came to see you. I didn't see you obviously at the Dreamgirls show, but obviously I could hear you.
yeah.
Um, and so I would just love you to talk about how you kind of like got to there basically and how you got to where you are now and how you got on the shows kind of from before, or even you can start as young as you like.
Okay, well, I suppose so. I think I'd always wanted to get into this kind of things. I remember being the first ever kind of, apart from a few school shows, like at high school, I think I did my first theatre show. I think I was about 14, 15, I think. And it was like just an Amdram, Depping for my drum teacher, doing Fame at, at Sedge in the Dormston Mill Theatre in Sedgley. Like this tiny, I think it was a school show, I think. But like they've got a band in of like loads of the music service teachers and me kind of thing. Um, and then from that kind of got a few more off the back of that because I think if you with this kind of thing it's a lot of, by the way, my brain jumps from bit to bit, so I'll try and keep it as like linear as I can. um but yeah, I think it just kind of snowballed from that really, and I gradually started to pick up work a lot of the time when people say like how did you get into it, um there kind of isn't really a set route, but I think you've just got to do as and say yes to, within reason, obviously, as much as you can to try and work your way into the kind of circles where you're going to be considered for that work. Because it's not necessarily a, I want to do this gig, can I have this gig? It's like you kind of, a lot of it is based on kind of word of mouth and like having the relevant skills. So being able to follow an MD is a big one. Being able to play along to a click is a massive one now. Having some knowledge of tech side of things as well, um, because on some shows, like for example, on shows like Frozen, or I think when Dreamgirls was in London before we did it on tour as well, drums cue the clicks. So you've got to have some knowledge of how the pads work and you know and all that side of things too. So it's all kind of useful skills, which I kind of built up doing amateur dramatic stuff, really, just kind of getting in with people doing Amdram shows. I think at one point, how many is that? 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
I think there was one year where I did something like 38, 39 weeks of Amdram shows when like it was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, but it's an education. And
Yeah.
sometimes like with Amdram, there's some luckily in the Midlands, there's some really, especially around here near Birmingham, there's some really, really good players on like the amateur scene who do a lot of professional stuff as well, but end up doing a lot of the amateur stuff around here too. So even playing with those guys was an education as well. Some of the guys have done the touring thing as well. So it's just like growing up doing that was a massive education to be able to go in. Because then sometimes with amateur shows, like I said, most of the time they're really good. There's some really good players, but sometimes you'll come across maybe an MD who's not as strong and stuff. And if you can do a good job in that situation, then when you get into like a professional setup in a professional tour, it's kind of a given that you can play and do your job. So it's actually a bit easier in
Yeah.
that sense sometimes. Um, but but yeah, I think it's mainly just get just gigging as much as I could, saying yes to everything that I could. Um, Eventually, my actual way in was I ended up on a function with a guy, and he was doing some theatre touring stuff at the time, and he was kind of in the process of putting some bands together for things. And he said he was trying to get me to sit in for for maybe a year or two. And at that point, I was really naive to the whole sitting thing. I it's a completely wrong opinion, but it was from the outside looking in at the time. I thought it looked a bit like I don't want to be like, oh, I really want this gig. Can I come and for you kind of thing? I didn't
Yeah.
want it to look like that, like I was fishing for work, which is completely wrong. Like obviously, having sitting now is it's kind of what you have to do. You have to network. You have to meet people. That's
Yeah.
just how it works. And I get that now, having worked in the industry. But like, but back then I was kind of saying, well, I can't really get down. I can't really do anything. Um, and I was doing something in London, and my gig ended up being in the afternoon rather than the evening. So I was done by like 1:30 instead of 7:30 or something like that. So I put on Facebook, I was, I'm around for the next like 7 or 8 hours if anyone's free, to just hang about for a bit. And this guy messaged me straight away. I was, you're going to sit in on American Idiot. I've already spoken to the drummer. Just go and sit in. I was like, all right, fair enough. And then ended up sitting in with a guy called Alex Marchesoni, who is incredible, like a ridiculously good player on that show. And then that was my first kind of experience of seeing how it worked and seeing the level. Because Alex is just a powerhouse, man. Like he's insane.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there and just crapping myself, basically, being like,
Does he have like longish, like ponytail hair?
He's impossibly handsome and Italian.
I think
everything that I'm not, basically, is Alex. Yeah. I mean, we'll get to it later, but when I ended up depping for him on that show, and it was just like, because his costume was like a cut vest down the side because he was toned up and like all this. I wasn't. So when I got there, I was like, can you sew the sides up for me? Because like I haven't got the side profile that Alex has. But that was my first kind of experience of seeing how, the standard. And that was a show as well where it was just a heavy, because it kind of had to sound like the records. Because have you seen American Idiot, the musical?
No, obviously I know the music though.
Yeah, so it's basically that album was, I think it was written as a concept album, as a theatre, like with that in mind. So it's basically the entire album, but with some extra stuff added, like some string stuff, and it's really cool. And it's just a monster play. And I remember Alex, like after he played the first couple of numbers, it's like American Idiot into I think it's into Holiday, if I remember right. But yeah, it's just like 3 or 4 songs where it's just solid. And I remember Alex being out of breath. I was like, it can't be that knackering, surely. What you don't realize is whenever you listen to that album, every single note that Trey Cool plays is an accent.
Yeah.
So like, it's just like forearm for like 25 minutes. But yeah, it's anyway, this is the jumping thing. So yeah, so basically that was my first experience of seeing the level, and then I ended up doing a panto for the same kind of fixer person. And then I did my first show, and the bass player on that show, he did the first half of the show and then went off to fly out to Germany to carry on the Jesus Christ Superstar tour, I think it was Jake was doing. And I think that this fixer had kept Jake. He's a really good player. He's a really good mate as well. He's awesome. But I think he'd kept Jake on that first half to kind of suss me out, I think, to see
right.
do it, basically.
Yeah.
Then the other bass player was taken over from Jake, took over in the second half of the show. And even though I've never really done anything like that before, I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. Yeah. And then at like 2 o'clock that morning, the fixer guy emailed me after my first show. He was, do you fancy doing the Avenue Q tour for like 6 months? I was like, yeah, great. That'd be amazing. And that was my first contract then.
Right.
But Avenue Q was, it was great, but it was like, you've got like kit, bongos, wind chimes, like bits of perk as well on the chair. So it's quite a nice one to do. And it was a really good contract, my first contract, because it was like, everyone was really nice. The cast were really nice. Like the crew, everything was just really, really great.
Were you with Alex Bellamy on that tour?
Yeah. He's a keys player, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he came in. He didn't do all of it. I think he came in and depped. Oh, right. Hang on. Yeah, he depped for a guy called Dan Glover.
Yeah.
Who was the assistant MD on that show. So yeah, Alex is lovely. He's great.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. Oh,
cool. But yeah, he's. How do you know Alex? What are you doing with Alex?
I depped Panto and he was the MD.
Oh, great, amazing.
It's like such a small circuit, isn't it?
Like, honestly, it is. Like, you don't realize until you actually kind of break the glass ceiling that actually everybody knows everybody, and that's kind of, it's a good thing. And it's also like if you do a bad job, or if something happens, that's on the negative side of things, then people hear about it because everybody knows everybody. So it's kind of a good thing and can be a bad thing as well. So basically started off in Amdrams, ended up on Avenue Q as my first one, and then I just got really lucky. I kind of ended up going from show to show to show from 2016 until until the start of last year,
Yeah.
basically, which is when I kind of, because I've got my little boy, I kind of thought, well, I
Yeah.
need to be at home for a bit. So I started to kind of go more into the Depping side of things, just so I could be at home a bit more. Um, but yeah, I've been really lucky with the shows that I've done. Like they've all been really, really good kit chairs.
Yeah.
Which I think is I mean, kit's my main instrument. My degree was on orchestral percussion. But I did that as just kind of because I wanted to open myself up to as much work as possible,
Yeah. So, you know,
basically.
in your degree, did you get much kit time, or was it primarily like timp and percussion?
Excuse me. So the course at the time, it was the orchestral percussion course. So it was primarily like timpani lessons, percussion lessons, marimba. It was a very heavily focused course on marimba, actually. So you
Right.
had to learn like four-manic marimba and I don't know what that was. You had to like four-manic marimba and block and like all that kind of stuff. It was basically based on orchestral rep. So you
Right.
had a technical exam where you had to learn all these orchestral excerpts, and then you do a recital. But we did have the kit teacher there at the time, who's still there now. I teach there alongside him now, which is really surreal.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not worthy at all. But he's a guy called Malcolm Garrett, who is just incredible. Like he's
Yeah.
insane. I remember my first lesson with him. I walked in, and after about he did something, and I was like, "Can you just tell me everything that you know, please? Like everything, like what I can do in one hand, he can do in his right foot. Like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's incredible. So he's but yeah, lessons with him were amazing. Um, but that was it really. That was because kit wasn't really a heavy part of the degree
Yeah.
when I was there. Now, I mean, I started teaching there in September, and the course there now is awesome. It's like really, really well rounded. Like they go over to Cuba and stuff and play with the percussionists over
Wow.
there and things, and it's awesome. It's like a really well
Birmingham,
rounded,
right?
yeah, Birmingham Conservatoire.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I teach on the orchestral course as one of the kit teachers. There's me and Malcolm.
Okay. 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 Okay.
But it's awesome now. It's really good. But like I said, when I was there, it was heavily focused on orchestral playing. So there was a lot of you have to do loads of rehearsals with like the college orchestra and brass band and wind band and everything like that. But I used to do a ton of brass band stuff when I was younger as well. So that if a lot of people ask me about like how they develop their reading and stuff,
Yeah.
I'd say join a brass band or a wind band
Yeah.
because honestly, you're reading everything and
Yeah.
running between 15 different instruments.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
used to do orchestral gigs. I'd do an orchestral gig and be on triangle for one piece, and that'd be it. Whereas, like on a brass band gig, you're playing kit, xylophone, timps,
Yeah.
marimba,
Yeah. Yeah.
like all in one piece, let alone like the whole gig.
So, did you
So
grow up on kit?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I think I started my tune percussion stuff. I've done it in some concert band. Again, the first time I actually played it properly was in the band of the West Midlands Fire Service. I think I was about 11,
Right.
and my mates I was in a brass band with were in that band, and they needed a percussionist. And I said, well, I've never played percussion before, but I'll try. So went along, and they told me I was on timps, and the conductor was like, right, there's G in bass clef, so just work your way down, and you'll be able to work the notes out. I was like, okay, cool. And honestly, there's no better way to learn than if 35 people know that you've cocked up. You learn a lot quicker then.
Yeah,
Um,
and I guess it's probably helped, like all of your experience like that has probably all accumulated to what makes you a really great theatre player because it is kind of just a condensed version of just a bigger scale orchestra, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, especially now, like bands are getting smaller and smaller now as well. So there's a lot of stuff that if you're a multi-player, if you can play drums and the percussion side of things, then it's advantageous
Yeah,
because there's a lot of chairs. I mean, like the latest show, the show I'm on now, I'm doing a show called Bangrenation.
I
Like,
did see, yeah.
yeah, it's mental. Like, it's awesome. It's really really good. But the
People
setup
lost
is
it
like,
on ecstasy, is it?
oh man, it's huge. So I've got a baffly, which is like a frame drum, and then the kit, and then I've got two Roland drum kit pads next to me that are an electronic kit and an 808 snare, a Roland hi hat, then a Yamaha DTX multi pad with 12 other samples on it, and then a Glock, and then some other stuff. So it's just like it's insane. um, but I mean, we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
But yeah, but definitely like having the experience of that stuff helps because yeah, like if you've got and especially like some guys, if you've only played kit and then you all of a sudden you face a glockenspiel, you're
Yeah.
just going to stack it. Like, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to kind of know how to get the right sounds out of it, when to, play different ways. So it's definitely a good thing. As much knowledge as possible, basically. That was my kind of thing growing up. Was I just want to do everything just to get as much experience as you possibly can, because you'll never know. Like this Bangor Nation thing, I used to play in like an Indian wedding band for years, and we did like the Malaysian International Jazz Festival, like the Bollywood Oscars. Like it was random. We're in a Bollywood film as well. So having the knowledge of that kind of, that sector is invaluable for this, because now like we've got a live tabla player and a doll player in the pit, so it's knowing what kind of drum breaks they're going for,
Yeah.
and things like that. So just any knowledge is good knowledge. Just try and just say yes to as much as you can, unless it's like if you live in Devon and it's a gig in Scotland for like a fiver, then obviously don't take that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just try and do as much as possible to get exposure to as much musical knowledge as you possibly can, basically.
Yeah. And so you said it was someone you knew who got you got to sit you in an American India, and then is that how you met a few of those players?
Yeah, so so basically, it was the keys player on that function gig, and he ended up being part of the team who were fixing the band for that show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was very much kind of, but I'd never met him before that gig, so it was just a kind of a chance meeting,
Yeah.
basically. But
Yeah.
that's most of the time that's how it works, I think.
Yeah.
Just bump into people, or the alternative route, like I said now, is just sitting and getting to know people.
Yeah.
And I think now as well, like having some kind of footage on your social media as well is also quite a good thing, because I think the first thing people will do now is go to your Instagram
Yeah.
and have a look. If no one's heard of you, they can just look at, oh, okay, cool, it looks like you can play. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it was just kind of right place, right time, because I've been trying to get into that professional side of things for years.
Yeah.
Um, but just before that happened, my first kind of professional tour wasn't in musical theatre. It was with a band called the Drifters, who
Okay.
were like, I think that they were like an R&B group from like the '60s to like, yeah, they were quite. They had like, I didn't realize how many like big songs they'd had until I got the gig.
Yeah.
And I looked at Spotify and I was like, oh, okay, right. I know most of these. And like for
Yeah.
some reason, 80% of the gig was marimba. It was really weird. But that was another one. That was a percussion. So I was on percussion for that. So it was two Timps and Mallet Cat. So again, having the knowledge to know how to program a Mallet Cat as well, like with all the different
Yeah.
samples and sounds and things. And that, yeah, we just did one nighters, and we did an arena tour with that as well. It was quite cool. That was my
Yeah.
first ever arena tour, and I thought it was going to be my last until I did one just recently. So it was quite nice.
It won't be your last, mate, I doubt.
I hope not, 'cause it's really cool. But yeah, it'd be great to do some more.
Yeah.
But so it was very much kind of, I happened to be on a gig with this person. He was like, "Oh, cool. Well, can I have your number?" And then it just
Yeah.
kind of went from there, basically.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think that's such a misconception, isn't it? About, and I always find this with like what they like that networking shit. I hate that word because it's under the false assumption that like you have to go to an event, then you all have to like kiss each other's ass just in case one of you like makes it, and then they can help everyone else out. Like for me, networking is like you go and you play. This actually happened last summer. You go and you play a wedding gig, and you help. Like usually on the wedding and functions now, they don't pay a sound engineer, like they just pay one of the band to do all the sound, right? So it was a bass player on this one. And it was literally just about me and him, and I just helped him pack down because I was staying, it was in Ipswich, which is miles from me.
yeah,
But I was staying down there anyway, so I didn't have anywhere to be. Everyone else had to go home. So I just helped him pack down, and it probably saved him maybe like 45 minutes, an hour of his like night. And we were just like chatting. And then by the end of that conversation, he gave me like three more contacts that I didn't ask for, just because he was like, "Oh, mate, you mentioned you wanted to get into this. Like, maybe try speak to this person. Say I said like that. I think is what real networking looks like, isn't it? It's probably you going for like a coffee with someone who plays on the West End, just for a catch up. You know?
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I wouldn't exactly class myself as part of the London scene completely at all. Like I've done a couple of gigs, and I know quite a few people there now, which is really great. But I wouldn't say I'm like a regular in town or anything like that at the moment. I dep on a few things down there, obviously like Frozen and stuff, and a few
Yeah.
other things that are coming up. But yeah, it's one of those things where it just helps to be friendly.
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you. This is going to sound really harsh. For me personally, you can always tell the guys who are going over the top with that side of things.
Yeah.
Um, and just like I don't know, I've had a few sit-ins where some guys have came to sit in for the sake of sitting in and have just sat on their phone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why are you here then?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're obviously not interested. You're just doing it just to
Yeah.
say you've sat. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so there's a bit of that that goes on, but on the whole, I think it's just being nice and
Yeah.
having genuine, just catching up with people's quite cool. I think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like you said, I think the whole thing of just meeting people is a good thing to do
Yeah.
as long as it's done in the right way. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
be
I
honest and
agree.
just say, look, I'm looking to get into stuff at some point. It'd be great just to see how it all works. Like, would you mind if
Yeah.
I came to have a look? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's great. Like I had one, the nicest one I ever had. It was one of my very first sit-ins. I remember the guy's name, but I won't say it. But he's great. But he left a letter at stage door because he was local to the theatre, and he just left a letter there addressed to the MD and the drummer saying, "Hi, my name's so and so. I'm just doing my degree at so and so. Would it be okay if I just came to have a look how it works?" And
Yeah.
that was great because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, he's
Yeah.
showing some initiative, like it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I think there is a fine line. Obviously, there's a few
Definitely.
people who try.
And I think what rubs people up the wrong way, I was learning with when I did my last, I was really, really lucky to learn with Doug Harper, who's on Book of
Oh,
Mormon.
Doug, man, I sat in with him on Mormon. Like, oh,
He's just like,
he's insanely good,
oh
man.
my God, like absolute beast. And then, like even being in lessons with him, he's just like playing stuff. You're like, I just have no idea like how you're doing that. And and he was so great. I sat in, I think twice I sat in with him and he was just great, like great teacher, great guy. And he was telling me that he'd, get some college students come in and sit in. And then after one time of sitting in, they'd be like, oh, I feel like I'm ready to depth you now. And
Yeah,
he'd be like, what?
yeah,
It's like, you've got to earn, like, you have to earn your straight. It is that type of industry. And I kind
yeah.
of like that about it, that you do have to learn because it proves that everyone who's in the jobs have had to also go through that kind of like ritualistic thing.
Oh yeah, it's a slog. Like
Yeah.
there's no way. Like you, I mean, like a show like Dreamgirls, for example. It's basically just like 2.5 hours of like blasting Motown for
Yeah.
for like two and a half
Yeah.
hours. So like there's
16 minutes.
yeah. So like oh man, every single vamp was like, find something else. Um, but it was incredible though that show. But yeah, like they but it's just knowing how to deal with that side of things, or
Yeah.
something like when we did Joseph. There's like a tempo change like every 30 bars and a few of the numbers that you have to be ready for.
Yeah.
And like I had a similar thing on that show. Somebody sat in on that show and was like, right, so when can I come in? It's like, I,
Yeah. It just does not work like
not
that.
not yet, not yet.
No, finish your degree and then maybe we'll talk.
Yeah, but
I think the best advice I had was off because obviously when I work front of house, and I think that's something that people can really utilize as well. There's a really fine line when you're on the other side of it as well, when you don't want to be like that annoying person that's like asking everyone to sit in all the time, but you also want the information, and there's like a really like fine line between it. So we had the
yeah.
girls there, the calendar girls, and it was Richard Beadle who was the MD. And he was in the Phoenix Artists Club one night, and I just remember
That
asking.
was that was just before we were in.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you
Yeah,
guys
that
came
was
in
the week
immediately
before it
after that. Yeah.
because we
Um,
had the bass player. We had the same bass player, Ed.
did you?
Yeah, we stayed on. Yeah,
And then he went on to do MD Hamilton, which had just opened. And he was like a
yeah.
really, really good MD. And I just remember being like, what, just one night in the bar, I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I don't want to take up any of your time, but what would you say is the best thing to do? Like, I'm studying my master's. Like, I want like good, like first-hand experience. He was like, go and do ships. He was like, go and do ships. You'll play 300 songs a week, all in different styles, genres. You'll have to read everything. If you get into the show bands, you'll be playing to click and track. And he's like, it is kind of just a smaller scale version of what we do here. And I
Yeah.
kind of took that as my gospel. And then 4.5 years later, here I am. So
No,
it's,
man. Honestly, ships. They're. I mean, I haven't done any. I was offered some, but I've never had the chance to do any. I was offered one, and I was like 19. I'd just taken on a teaching job. I was offered this like cruise gig to Australia for a year. I was like, oh no, I've got to do this teaching job for the week. was like, oh, I should have just done that cruise gig. Um, but no, it's I do a lot of gigs now, and a lot of guys in the theatre world have done ships because yeah, that what he said was perfect. Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's just if you can just do that where you sight read, because essentially sight reading, you get the charts like what that day, and you
For
just
some
have
of
to
the
kind of play
fly-ons,
them.
yeah, the fly-ons are maybe the night before, and then you'd spend a sleepless night recharting all of their like crappy charts, which is like an
Yeah, man.
exercise in itself, isn't it?
No, it's great, man. Well, I dep on there's a Warner hotel near me that got a resident band, and I dep on that, and it's the same sort of thing sometimes where like a visiting, it's basically a cruise ship on land. So
Yeah.
like, so they like a visiting act will come in. We get the charts like 5 minutes before we play with them, and they're like, right, you do this, do this. Okay, great, and that's it, and that's all
Yeah.
you get.
Yeah.
So like again, it's just such a valuable skill set because like prime example with Bangor Nation, um, we had during band calls, it was all kind of being rewritten all over the place because it's brand new, so they're kind of changing stuff and altering setups and stuff, and they'll just bring a new chart in. Like on we I think we
Yeah.
had one on the day of the dress as well. So it was like, there you go. So, okay,
Yeah.
great, cool.
Yeah.
So like you
Yeah.
have to be ready for those situations. And if you can't read, obviously you won't be.
Yeah,
So the ship stand
exactly.
is a great place to
Yeah,
start.
it's been invaluable. It's been absolutely invaluable, and it's definitely set me up for. And it's just the sheer amount you play as well. You know, like at home, if you're lucky during wedding season, you'll do two nights a week really. And on the ships, you're doing 6 nights a week for 2.5, 3 hours a night. So it's just like you have the
Yeah, yeah.
chance to correct mistakes a lot quicker than you would. Your advancement is just like double or triple what it would be on land. And
Yeah.
that's why it's been really great. I mean, the one thing I think that like we have with the ships, we had I think the most we've ever done, I think was uh probably like 16 different like show sets in a week. And so, but we had 2 months to learn the material and get to grips with it all. And then, you're allowed to read there and stuff. I think one of the things that really amazes me about you and about the debt players and about the West End players who frequently debt shows is that you're playing, you could be playing 3 different shows a week, all with like we're talking the most complex. That doesn't really get much harder than West End or some of these touring shows. And you're doing 3 of these with, 30, 40 really complicated tracks. How do you like, can you talk me through the process of how you learn like to do that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is when if it's your own contract, I think it's a bit easier. Because sometimes you've got a bit of time to play with it and it's fine. Whereas in a depth situation, you're going in, you have to kind of nail it. I remember my first step on Frozen. I've never been so scared in my life as I was for my first step on Frozen. It's a great play, and Tim on drums is incredible. He's so good. Tim, he's lovely as well. He's great, but like it's just scary because there's a lot to think about, like with queuing things and hitting the right things at the right time, following the MD, like, and,
Yeah,
and you have to fire the clicks bang on when the band play as well. So it's getting
yeah,
used to the MD Adam's really really clear, but obviously if you're not playing with the same MD every time, you're kind of having to get used to where because most bands play bang on, but occasionally it's just a bit after or just before, so it's just
yeah,
making
yeah,
sure it's like a microsecond thing. But if
yeah,
you're trying to hit at like exactly the same point, you need to make sure it's there.
yeah,
So I'm my hand a lot. But yeah, like I think it's so what I do, I tend to kind of really over prep as much as I can.
yeah.
So the most recent one I was in on was the Wicked tour. And have you been in on?
I was lucky enough to sit in with Gareth on the West End.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, the setup on tour, I think, as far as Craig, because it's Craig Hansen on tour.
Right.
He's a monster. He's great. Um, and I think the setup from that is pretty much the same. So there's
Yeah.
like 3 triangles and loads of symbols and
SPD, yeah.
SPD, and it's very specific to which symbols you have to hit as well.
Right.
Like the China has to be at certain points. So it's kind of what I do. I've got like I've got at the moment because obviously my little lads here, we haven't got any of my drum equipment in the house here at all. So I've got like a little practice room set up at my mum's. So basically, I've got like it's just a really basic electric kit, like an Alesis Oh, what's the black mesh one with the really
Yeah.
low end, whatever that is. Nitro, at least it's nitro. So I've got a 5 piece one of those. One, two, three, four. Yeah, a 6 piece one of those with 3 cymbals, and then my DTX multipad there as well. And I just kind of get everything as close as it can be to where what the setup's like,
Yeah.
and just get used to the muscle memory of it
Yeah.
all, basically. And I also like really overnote the pad as well.
Right.
So I'll put, like, I've got my own little system of like color coding stuff. So I always tend to use my tablet now when I go in and dep on stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I've got a little coded system of like, right, anything that the MD is going to do, I'll highlight in blue and put, because you always get sent an MD video as well in the recording,
Yeah.
so you can kind of learn what happens. Um, so I'll kind of go through and be like, right, at this point, the MD gives a 3/4 in, so I write 3 with an arrow, 4 with an arrow, highlight it in blue. It's not necessarily that I'm reading everything. I can see from the colours that it's like, right, that's what to look for. Good, you know what I mean? Just to
Yeah.
make it as little to actually read on the day as possible.
Mhm.
But then by the time I get to my first step, I've hopefully ran the show through a good, like, a lot of times before that.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that everything's there, the muscle memory's there, because it's always going to be slightly different when you're going onto a new kit and stuff. But
Yeah.
especially with Wicked, because the music stand is like over here, and a lot of the times you've got to hit the China, which is like over there.
Right.
So it's kind of just getting used to
Yeah.
where that is. So when I first went in on Wicked, I was there really early. I sat in on the matinee, and then there was like 2.5 hours before my first show in that evening. So I just kind of stayed in the booth and just played through everything to get used to it
Right.
while I was
Right.
in.
Right. 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 Okay.
But it's literally just muscle memory, just doing stuff over and over and over and over again, and making loads of notes and going through videos. So it's not like a couple of days thing. It takes a while,
Yeah.
a long, long time just to get stuff prepped properly. But I'd
Yeah.
rather do that and go in and have as little obstacles as I can when I'm in there. I don't want to have to be thinking, oh, what's coming next? Like if I'm in that situation when the adrenaline's going and you're already nervous, because it's impossible to go into that situation and not be
No,
nervous. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Because I think,
unhealthy.
like you said, also, I think there's the added bit where it is a very small circuit. And if you do go in and you're under prepped or for whatever reason you don't have a good gig, it's probably in the back of your mind as well that like this could affect my future prospects with more work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think as long as you've prepped it and you've put the work in and you know the stuff, then hopefully that's all right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's if you go in and you don't know it, and especially on something like that, or like I was depping on Lion King over summer, in Birmingham, and that was, I mean, that's a monster show. It's
Yeah.
great, but again, it's like a big, huge kit, some hand percussion and some pad stuff. So you just need to know where you're moving,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
There's not many of the shows now. I'd say they're not impossible to sight read, but because of all the extra stuff, if it was just a kit thing, it'd be fine. But I
Yeah.
think because of all the extra skills you need now, all the extra digital side of things and percussion stuff, most shows aren't really sight readable at the moment.
No, I know. I think that's the thing. They're at a level of complexity now, like you said, where you're not just sitting down at a kit and playing, a 5 piece kit with a few cymbals. It's really a lot more complicated than that with SPDs and like look at the opening of Wicked, right? Like with
Oh
the
yeah,
when the monkeys are like coming down. Like when he first started playing that and he was pointing because back then my reading wasn't as strong as it is now, and so he was so lovely, Gareth. He was like pointing any at the plot, like this is how good he was. He was playing Wicked, which is like an insane show anyway, and then he would just like take one hand off to show me where he was like in the charts, so I could
great.
like so I could like follow along with him. Um,
Oh,
and it's
man.
just like you really do have to be on your shit on shows like that, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. You can't go in under prep. You'll get found out straight away
Yeah.
if you haven't bothered with it. Like,
Yeah, and
because
you can
people
be the
know.
best. You can be the best leader in the world, but there's a limit. I think. I think there's a limit to you being able to actually go in and sight read something like that,
Oh yeah,
just on the spot.
no, I don't think it. Especially with something like Wicked, I don't think it's doable.
Yeah,
There's so much to consider when you're playing it as well, and stuff that you wouldn't necessarily pick out if you were just listening to the soundtrack on Spotify or something.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But it's stuff that the really kind of nuanced stuff of like which triangle to use, because
yeah,
they're very specific. Like
yeah,
they want to use the small one here and the middle one there. So like it's pretty cool. But then there are some shows that are just kit that are still monstrous, like that On Your Feet one. I do one called On Your Feet. It's like a Gloria Estefan
Yeah.
musical, and that just wasn't sight readable because it was just a roast. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
amazing. It was one of the most enjoyable, if not the most enjoyable thing I've ever done, but and the most surreal as well because it was an audition for that one.
Right.
We got called into audition for that one. And did you were you still in London at that point, or were you on the ships then? I think that
Where,
was
where,
20.
where was it playing? What
So
theatre?
it's not. We were at the Coliseum for 3 months. In 2019.
I
I think.
think I just left for ships.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the Coliseum for 3 months, and then we went on tour,
Yeah.
and then COVID hit.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that show. So, have you ever heard any of Gloria Estefan's music?
Yeah, we've played a few on the ship. We had like a Latin show
Oh, cool.
on the ship. Yeah.
So it was just the most surreal thing because my mom and dad are like big fans of like Gloria Estefan.
Yeah.
So when I got the call to audition, I was on Joseph at the time, and they said, "Yeah, we're going to audition a few people and just see what works." And we ended up at a cafe in London called Premises. It was like a cafe on the front and the studio at the back. So we all just there was about 40 of us just huddled into this cafe. Um, and I think I was the first drummer in, and the MD of On Your Feet was a guy called Clay Oswald, who was the keys player and songwriter for the Miami Sound Machine.
Oh, okay.
So he was Gloria Estefan MD because the band on Broadway were the Miami Sound Machine,
Right.
were her band. So it was just like hearing the recordings of that was just mental.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm from like Wednesbury, it's like the least Latin place like in the world. So I remember like I think for that I had the call come in. I think I had like it was maybe three weeks, maybe something like
Yeah.
that. I think to prep for it. So I just hired like a studio out near home when I wasn't on tour. Because I think Joseph at the time was doing like 10 shows a week or something. So whenever I was at home, I was hiring a studio down the road, Splinter Studios, just shedding this stuff because it was hard. There's
Yeah.
one called Tradition, which is like it's a comparsa, like a carnival thing. So your feet are doing one ostinato, like carrying on, and then Clay said he basically didn't want the same bar twice in the hands.
Oh
So
my
it's just
God.
basically just your feet sticking on ostinato and your hands just doing whatever. Like so that took a while. But it was great. So I was the first drummer in, and I was so nervous because I knew who he was, I knew what he'd done, and I was just like shaking, putting like I had to set the kit up. It was like this battered old stage custom, and I went in and put like this cymbal off an amp on the stand, like shaking. And the supervisor was like, "Oh, 14-inch higher. That's a weird choice for a crash." I was like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah.
And then yeah, tried to make really bad small talk with Clay. He's like, "How was your flight?" Oh, sorry. Um, and then yeah, played the first couple of tunes, and he said, "Right, that sounds great." He said, "Can you stick around for the afternoon because the people we're looking at keeping on will put into different groups and see what works."
Yeah.
I ended up going back in at like 4 in the afternoon. My audition was at 10, so just waited in this cafe while everyone else went out, got sent home, all that kind of stuff. And then when I went back in the afternoon, Gloria Estefan had turned up, so
Oh
she was
my
sat in the
God.
room, and I just like, oh shit. It was incredible. But I was like, oh god. And we started one tune, and I was the only person with it. There was like a click track just to get the tempo set for the audition. And I put the click on, and I started, and I stopped the whole band. They went, "Oh, Dan, can you just take the volume down?" I was like, "Oh crap! Well, I've lost it now. I've got it." Great. So then did that, did the audition, and then a few of us went to a pub over the road afterwards, and we were like, "Did that just happen? Like, did we just play for like?" So Gloria Estefan in there. That was insane. And then I think because I'd driven the furthest, I got the gig basically.
I doubt that.
And then it was just, yeah, we are just in rehearsals for like a month in Leicester with me, the assistant Danny Belton, and then Gloria Estefan and Clay Oswald just in Leicester. So it'd be like, "Morning, Gloria."
Yeah, it's so surreal.
This is
Yeah.
insane. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, that whole gig was amazing. Like
Yeah.
the music's incredible. Like
Yeah.
the band we had on it were insane as well, both in London and on the tour as well. There's some like serious players on it.
Yeah.
So it was just really tight. I've got like depth recordings of it that sound like a produced album because
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah. I
the
can
sound
imagine.
quality and the monitoring we had on. Like I think they ran it like it was a pop gig rather than a theatre gig.
Right. 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 Right.
So it sounded like really, oh, it was great. It was such a good gig to play.
Yeah, I mean that leads
Um,
me really nicely into like you how do you stay on top of the like variance in genres of all of these different shows? Like obviously the Gloria Estefan stuff is very specific, and Wicked is different type of specific, and then you're on Lion King, and then you're on, like how do you manage all of that?
um, to be honest, it's something I don't really think about. I think it's just kind of having if it's just having knowledge of that stuff basically, and knowing what to call upon as like I don't really think about this is a Latin, so I must make sure that my you know what I mean. Like, it's
Yeah.
just it kind of just I suppose it comes down to instinct. I'm not necessarily going to say my instinct's correct all the time, but
Yeah.
like just like things like if I've got experience of a genre, I'll kind of stick to those principles subconsciously, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and just kind of do something that sounds good based on that, basically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, with theatre in general, I think knowledge of genres again is like a big plus point
Yeah.
because like, again, if you've got like a Latin show or like then you go to like Lion King, which is kind of like African stuff, and Wicked's got all sorts in it.
Yeah.
So and then Bangor Nation thing as well is another one. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of just a bit of knowledge I've built up over the years, basically. Just try and
Yeah.
incorporate as much of that as I can. I think
Yeah.
basically.
And obviously, I think you've got such a great, obviously, base in probably heavy technique, I'd imagine, from when you were doing your percussion at the conservatoire.
Mm.
With like, we doing like a lot of snare drum reading and technique and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got to college, I, I don't think I did too much technique before I got to college. I was playing in like marching bands, brass bands, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I think when I got to college, I was doing this really weird thing with my right hand. So my left hand was fine, but my right hand, which I find a lot now, I'm teaching a bit more as well. My right hand, the stick was coming like down the middle of my hand here. So I
Oh,
was doing this
okay.
weird kind of, so it's kind of following the line of my hand that way rather than that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my snare drum teachers, John Herbert, um, he was like, "What's going on?" So I don't know. It feels all right to me. Like, it's fine. And so we kind of adjusted it a bit so it works. And yeah, I think technique was something I never really ever thought about until I got to college.
Yeah.
Um, just because my lessons were kind of my drum teacher at school was amazing as well. A guy called Lee Hobson, and he was great. We focused on a lot of grade stuff and did other stuff and things, but he must have pointed stuff out with. I can't even talk today. He must have pointed stuff out with regards to my technique, but it just kind of we were just playing through stuff and just getting used to the instrument, I
Yeah.
suppose, and
Yeah.
his styles. And he's awesome. But I think it wasn't just something because I had the facility to do that with that hand, and it wasn't causing me any problems at that point. I
Yeah.
think it was just it was fine at that point. But then when I got to college, when it was an orchestral player, because obviously they're very technique
Yeah.
focused.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So John was like, let's sort that out. so
Yeah.
so it was a bit of an adjustment. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of time, especially if you're doing like 8 shows a week, like you need to have half decent technique because otherwise you're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I did it at the start of American Idiot actually. I never used to warm up before a show. I still don't do it too much now actually. I'm pretty bad with that. But like back then I did American Idiot the first show and I got RSI
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and my hand went numb. So I'd
Really?
switched. Yeah, well, this bit. So I switched to playing with the stick between my two fingers for the first.
Wow.
Um, and then yeah, so for the next couple of weeks on that show, I was in for like 2 hours before on a practice pad,
Yeah.
just warming up properly, and
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
my like wake up call to be like, right, you need to sort this out,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
But again, it was just something I never really thought about.
Yeah.
I've been quite lucky in that I've just kind of fell into things that have led me to this point.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's never really something I've thought about and like
Yeah.
applied myself to. It's just kind of happened. It's been a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but like it's just something I've always just done. I've never thought of it as practice, like on my drums. It's always just been something I've just remembered from like 11 years old, just being in my room on my drums for like 4 hours
Yeah.
a day, just because I enjoyed it rather
Yeah.
than, right, I've got to sit down and do my rudiments.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
now, if I'm teaching now, I say, right, Here's the rudiments you need.
Yeah.
Here's your technique you need. Like it's kind of a staple for what I teach now.
Yeah, so
Because
now you teach. My go-to has always been it's like the Bible. I revisit it once a year, every year. The Jojo Mayer Secret Weapons. That's like my hand Bible for technique. And I actually painstakingly during COVID did his second one on foot technique.
oh
So
man,
I don't play into the head like any. I had to like
you
relearn
never
like
bury it.
15 years of burying the head on every time I hit it, and I'd leave the head in. I'd leave
Oh man.
the beater in. So I had to painstakingly unlearn that, and then I quickly realized, apart from theater players, 90% of like pop musicians, they all leave it in. And so, do you have, now you teach and stuff? Do you have like resources like that, like the Jojo Mayer DVDs and stuff that you really like draw upon, and that are like your go-tos?
Um, so I think if it depends on what we're looking at. So I think, by the way, I bury the beater all the time,
Okay.
massively. Yeah. But yeah, I think obviously if I was in like a jazz trio, which is rare, but if I was playing jazz trio, then I wouldn't be like, no, it'd be a
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think for me, I've completely gone blank now. Syncopation by is it Ted Reed?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So syncopation is great for building up your reading
Yeah.
and coordination because you can take any of the exercises from that and put any beat you want behind. That's what
Yeah.
Malcolm used to do with me actually at Conservatoire when I was having lessons with him. Just put things behind it, vary your hands and feet, and then try and read the patterns that are in front of you with your left hand,
Yeah.
or swap hands and do the same thing. Because that's pretty much what reading gigs are like. You just kind of identify patterns, don't you?
Yeah.
Essentially, you read
Absolutely.
stuff quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a good one. Real world chart wise, the Tommy Igo Groove Essentials books are amazing
Yeah.
for that. They're great. Just for more kind of real world. If drum charts are written well, that's what they look like.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like very little on the page actually, but just like
Yeah.
you know. That's a great one. But I've also got my own stuff that I've written. I've got my own resources. Like I wrote this thing when I was teaching for the music service when I was like 18. That's basically I called it the Clean Plane Pack, and it's essentially just like it's based on. Have you ever heard of grids before? So
Uh,
it's like an American drumline exercise thing where they basically have like um, sort of a default bar with no accents in, and then I'll have the next bar will have a specific accent pattern that they follow. Then go back to the first bar, then go to the second bar, and just alternate through that. But it's making sure that your technique's there in such a way that you're thinking about when you're preparing for the next note.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Going to be a controlled stroke or a rebound stroke or whatever. So it's really good to kind of overanalyze stuff so that you can kind of get it into your psyche a bit, and then it's
Yeah.
just something you'll end up doing naturally anyway.
Yeah.
So like if you were playing like a group of semiquavers or 16th notes, for example, and then you were say if you had 8 semiquavers in a row and then an accent on the next 8 semiquavers, it's thinking, right, when's my right hand gonna use an
Yeah.
upstroke
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
prepare
Yeah.
for you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's really like over analyzing it. But
Yeah.
like if you can get that into your head, you'll be like, oh, okay, it's just that, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
just you kind of just get it again. I think most of it's muscle memory as well.
Yeah.
Just build the muscle memory of it all. But I
Yeah.
think that they're kind of the main things I draw on. If I'm teaching younger kids, obviously, the grade systems are a good place to start.
Yeah.
So like Trinity and Rock School are okay, but I
Yeah.
think real world drum charts look nothing like what they're written like.
No. Mhm.
So it's kind of once they get to a point, once the students have got to a point where they're kind of competent and they can read all that stuff. So okay, well this is what this chart looks like from this gig. Or if I've got like every single function gig I've ever done. I've transcribed like every single track I've ever done on any function gig. So I've got this like library of like
Yeah.
thousands of like pop tunes charts. So
Yeah.
it's okay. Well, let's look at this then, and then
Yeah.
they can kind of work their way through that. Then, so they get a knowledge of like real world stuff as well, if it's
Yeah.
something they want to go into,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just again, it's just stuff I've kind of built up over the years, basically. But I'd say the Tommy Igo books are great for that
Yeah.
kind of thing
Yeah.
as well.
And
Um,
question I absolutely love asking, especially like players like yourself who play on tours or play like prolonged periods of time on one show.
yeah,
It's say it's like a Tuesday night, you've played the show, like you've played Dreamgirls 1,000 times, you know the show. how do you like maintain the same level of like energy and passion as you did, say, in like the open?
Um, it's a weird one because this is gonna sound like it's boring, and it's not at all. It's not a real job. It's awesome, to be honest. It's not.
Yeah.
My sister's a nurse in A&E. Like that's a job.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
play drums a bit, and it's
Yeah.
like but no, it's not at all. I think it's just one of those things where you just kind of it becomes a job, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it doesn't become like a depressing job that you don't want to do. It just becomes like a regular bit of routine to your day, basically. And I think it depending on the situation and the people as well. But I think a lot of sometimes it can get a bit tour bubbly. So if you hear like a slight mistake because you're used to hearing it with no mistakes, well, hopefully with no mistakes in a
Yeah.
lot of the time. If somebody does make one, it's funny. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty funny. But then
Yeah.
also like, everyone's got that level of competence usually where you're like, okay, fair enough. And it's corrected and it's
Yeah.
fine. It's not like a regular thing.
Yeah.
But I think you've definitely got to have like a certain mental stamina to be able to do that, I think. Especially if it's this, like I said, Dreamgirls was a year and a half for 8 shows a week. So it's kind of you do have to have a certain mental stamina for it. But I think if it's a good show and you're enjoying it, most of the time it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be on a tour that you might not necessarily approve of the music, but it's a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you just kind of you take the contract on, so you've just got to do it,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think. Um, but yeah, it's very easy to kind of fall down rabbit holes with that kind of stuff and get, you've got to be sort of strong mentally and have that kind of thing going on to be able to get through those things, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And another thing on this podcast I like to discuss with the people that I have on, we get to play like most of the time for a living. That becomes your living is you get to play drums, which is like a dream job.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's kind of nice sometimes to also balance it out with, like the parts of the life that aren't, that glamorous. So like when I'd come off ships and everyone would be like, oh my God, living the dream, you'd be like, it is really good. And I absolutely love it. I love playing abroad and I love getting to like go to the beach and then play in the nighttime. But, if I took you to, St. Thomas or St. Kitts or something like that in the Caribbean, you'd be like, this is the best. This is like what people fantasize about, when they retire and all that stuff. But if I took you
Yeah.
there every Monday for 4 years, you'd probably be like, I kind of get it, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
it does become there are sides to the life that I think people they just want all they want to hear is like, oh my God, you live the dream. And I think one of the most poignant stories I had was with a guy called Eric Pickfunk Smith, who was the Justin Timberlake bass player and played with Janet Jackson for years. And he's like this monster bass player. And I asked him the same question, and he said the hardest, I think, conversation he had. So he'd just come off the Justin Timberlake 2020 tour. He was like at the height of his like, playing and he came home and it was like, I think 16-month tour or something. And he came home and, to his son, he was like, he said the tour was really well paid. So he said, let's go to like Dick's Sporting Goods store. Let's go and like, what do you want? I'll buy you like literally anything you want, like a basketball court or something. And his son was like, I just want you to be around, you know?
Yeah.
And he was like that really like sat with him. And I know recently, I think last year, you posted that you were taking a break from these extended tours. So what's the side of the life that people don't really see, and what have you found the toughest about the touring life?
Um. Yeah. I'm gonna preface this by saying I still really enjoy it. It's a great way to earn a living, and
Yeah,
if you haven't done it before and you want to do it, pursue it because it's great.
yeah,
Having said that, for me personally, um, I've been doing it for 7 years, and we had my little boy in lockdown, so he's 3 now. So I think when he was 6 or 7 months old, I went out on tour with Hairspray, and then it's because we were the first show to go back out after lockdown. So we were like the guinea pigs. So that was tough. Just there's a lot of extra stuff to deal with, and it was hard. And then Great band though, great show, lovely people. But yeah, because of everything that's going on, obviously it's going to be a bit more difficult than normal.
Yeah.
Um, then I moved to Dreamgirls. So it was basically for the first a year and a half to 2 years of his life, I was kind of away and only really back on Sundays. So luckily I didn't miss any milestones with him, like any of his first steps or first words or anything. So that was good. But he was just getting tougher and tougher to be away from him because I always had in my head that I didn't really want to be being away isn't an issue. Being away for a year and a half at this point in his life kind of is.
Yeah.
So I was kind of talking to a few people about it and just going and arguing over it. I thought I just need to be at home for a bit now. Um, so for me personally, it was kind of mainly that really just getting back for my son and just to be here a bit more. Some people can are touring with their families and stuff, and that's awesome. That's great. First, that wasn't something we could do just because of the circumstances we're in, unfortunately. But like, so for other people, that's fine. It's awesome. But for me personally, I just needed to be at home for a bit, I think. Um, but also sometimes, like if you're in a place that you've been to a million times, and maybe it's a city that there's not really much to do, and then you're there for like some shows are bed down for like 3 months. So if
Yeah.
it's in a place that's not really got a lot going on, and all you're doing is getting up, going to the show, getting up, going to the show, it can get a bit, it's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to preface this again by saying it's not a hard job. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
In comparison to other jobs, I'm not trying to make this sound like a sob story in the slightest
Yeah.
because it's not.
Yeah.
But everything has its challenges and stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever profession you do. So I think, um, and again, having a strong mental kind of state helps with stuff if you're not, and that can affect stuff as well. So I think there's a lot of factors that can deal into it. But again, it's something that I would, if I was younger, again, I'd still pursue.
Yeah.
Like if I was to live my life again, I'd still pursue it because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think it can be difficult kind of being away. Sometimes in the theatre world as well, you kind of have to book your own accommodation. So
Yeah.
you'll get like a bit of a fee on top, and that'll cover your accommodation. So sometimes, like when I was in Edinburgh, and I think I'd had some digs and that fell through. I booked them late, and it ended up costing me most of my fee for the week just to
Yeah.
stay in Edinburgh. So it
Yeah.
was like there's things like that where it's just like, well, after 7 years, I was like, okay, well, I just need a bit of time to kind of regroup and recalibrate stuff and be at home with my son. And
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I think it was definitely the right decision.
yeah, I've been really lucky with people getting in touch and offering me work and stuff since I stopped because it's always a worry because
Yeah.
like I said, I've been lucky with my theatre contracts going from gig to gig. I've never really had a gap in like 7 or 8 years, so I've been really really lucky with it. But when you get into the end of a contract for people who haven't got work coming up rather, because it can happen like that. You can have nothing, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you'll get a phone call like, do you want to do this for 6 months in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
got one offering me like a vita for a year in China.
Yeah.
It's like I was like, oh, I can't, sorry,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. It can literally just turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um, so yeah, I think if you get into the end of a contract, people start getting a bit like, right, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because also if you're on tour for a year, then you're not doing other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you've got to kind of find time to do other things and do other shows and do other gigs and stuff and just meet
Yeah.
people. And but yeah, I was always really lucky. So when I stopped the touring side of things temporarily, I was like, right, okay, what's going to happen now? And then luckily people got in touch. And but again, I think it's an experience thing because if people know that you've done it before, then it's a lot easier for them to go to the fixer. I've got Dan who did this, 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 and this. Would it be okay if you came into debt for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
of the time, that's a bit better than I've got this guy. I don't really know him that well. I've seen him play a bit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're going to look at two people,
Yeah.
then sometimes that can help. But so I've been really lucky. So and being at home again has kind of got me some more variety.
Yeah.
So I started playing with a lot of more different shows and doing more.
Well, a bit of stability with the teaching job as well, right?
Yeah, it's okay. It's cool. It's good. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. Now it's kind of trying to juggle everything again,
Yeah.
kind of making it all work again. So I'm still doing as much as I can in the theatre world. So
Yeah.
I'm still definitely as many shows as I can because it's a really good thing. It's cool. I
Yeah.
just enjoy it, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a sadistic pleasure because you just kind of live your life nervous for like the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, but it's it's fine. It's one of those things where it's good to have variety, so it's quite nice. I'm not
Yeah.
saying I'd never ever tour again. That's not the case.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back into it at some point. But
Yeah.
for now, like being at home, especially where I'm based in the Midlands as well, so I'm about 2 hours from everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's easy to I'm right in the middle of the country, so it's like really easy to get anywhere from where I am.
Yeah.
Um, so it's quite nice to be able to do that again because
Yeah.
that's what my training was like doing the Amdram stuff. Like with Amdrams, you have one band call on a Sunday morning, and then you into the show Monday to Saturday.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Whereas so if you're on your own tour, you have like a couple of days of band calls, and then you have a couple of
Yeah.
days of tech, and then you have the first show.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of my education anyway into this world.
Yeah.
So going back to do that again, obviously a bit of a different level with other stuff to consider and stuff, but it's quite nice to do. It's quite nice to be back in that on that side of things and occupy my brain a bit more because
Yeah.
Dreamgirls was incredible and it was amazing. But again, you're doing the same thing for 8 times a week
Yeah.
for a year
Yeah.
off. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just go into autopilot. So that's what I was
Yeah.
saying at the start about having sit-ins is great because it's like you're like, oh cool, okay, great.
I've
I'll
got to play.
concentrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And try not to put really inappropriate fills in all the time. But yeah. But no, it's cool.
And
It's
if you could speak to your younger self, would you give him like differing advice, or what sort of advice would you give him?
I'd sort his technique out for one. Um I don't know. I think I would have sat in on a lot more stuff when I was younger. I think that
Yeah.
was probably my main thing. Um yeah, I think I'd do a lot more of that. Just to kind of get because I think my first contract was 2016. So I would have been how old was I then? Born in 88. So what's that? 2026? Something
Yeah.
like 20, 27, 28. So I didn't get into it till quite late. But I think I would have probably, yeah, sat in on a lot more stuff and just maybe got down to London a bit more.
Yeah.
I think just to go and see things in London, meet people in London, just see what was going on. Because I ended up, like I said, the Phoenix the Avita was my first ever thing in London. So like it was just that was when I started to meet people.
Yeah.
Just because if you're on a gig, people sort of hear about things. So it's just quite nice to be in that world. In fact, that's how I ended up sitting in on um, with Doug. Actually, I just bumped into him randomly after like one of the shows at this place we'd all gone to afterwards, and I was like, "Do you mind if I just? I'm not fishing for work. Do you mind if I just come and watch you play? Because I just really want to come and see like some drummers play while I'm down here because I don't
Yeah.
get a chance to very often."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, fine," and it was
Yeah.
just like, "I need to practice, man." Like, man. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I think maybe I'd go and sit in on a lot more, and I think I'd kind of try and look at maybe just just the sitting thing. I think
Yeah.
I think because I was doing a lot of Amdram stuff anyway, so I was kind of doing a lot in that world. But I think maybe just getting all that side of things together and just going to see things and seeing what the standards like.
Yeah, yeah,
Basically,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that would be it.
Yeah, in that I was really lucky in that vein that I think I worked there and I was really lucky to go and watch and like sit and really study what kind of like level you have to be at to be on the West End continuously and playing those shows. And I think that timing would have been really funny because I think the guy you mentioned earlier, I think sat in with was depping for Doug at one point on Mormon, and he was like, "This kid is like amazing. He's like, he's
Oh,
so good."
really?
I think that's where I think I met him. I think because I was having lessons with Doug, and we'd sometimes go for a coffee, and I think he introduced me to that guy. So that is actually quite funny how that that workaround.
Oh man,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, like, there's so many good players around now as well.
yeah,
Like, but it's weird, like going in when I go and dep on stuff, and you see like some of the names have got their mixes saved. It's
yeah.
like
I bet.
I'll get imposter syndrome. I should not
Yeah.
be here.
I was
These
lucky enough
guys.
to go for a copy with Andy McGlasson as well. He was really
Oh,
nice.
he's a legend, man.
Yeah, he was really, really
So
nice. And he was on, I want to say School of Rock when I met him.
oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just
So
before
I
he
think
got the Cliff Richard gig, I think.
oh, cool. Okay, yeah. So I met him. He was doing a Vita at Regent's Park, and I think I was doing On Your Feet. And our bass player Johnny knew him really well. And he was like, "Oh, you should go and just sit in with Andy on a Vita. Like, I was like, okay, all right. So I messaged him. I was like, oh, hi, mate. I think Johnny's asked if I can come and sit in. And again, I was like, I'm not trying to fish for work. I know it's closing in a few weeks, but do you
Yeah.
mind if I sit? And he was like, oh, it's a shame. So I would have got you in. I was like, oh, crap. I shouldn't have said that. But no, he's lovely. He's great, man, as well. Like
Yeah.
sitting in with him on that was awesome because it was like, because obviously I did it for like 3 years in every possible iteration of it. like,
Yeah.
like we did like the 10-piece version, then we went to Turin and did it with like a 65-piece, like their opera orchestra in Italy in
Yeah.
Turin, which was insane.
Yeah.
But then like going to see that, the way they'd reimagined it and the way that he played it as well was just quality.
Yeah.
But he's
Is he a
great.
monster player? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's great. Like again, it was one of those things where because as drummers, you don't really get to see other drummers that
No.
often, especially that close up. So
Yeah.
like just going to do that, which is another good thing about the Depping thing, because you get to go and you kind
Yeah.
of keep you on your toes a lot more because you're sitting in with these people who are just monsters.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I need to play like, well, do some kind of version of that basically
And
to
how do
get
you
like.
make it like individual to you? You know, like if you would have watched, I don't know who the drummer was for the Dreamgirls on the West End for the full run, but like, and on the show track would have been the Broadway, or I think the show track was the London drummer actually, but obviously there was a Broadway track. So like, how do you merge it all and still have like kind of your own thing?
Um, so I never met. I always wanted to go and sit in because again, I was working on another show in London at the time when Dreamgirls was on in town, and it was a gig I'd kind of always wanted to do. But it was Ed. I think it was Ed Carlisle
Right.
on drums, and I've never met him. But the recording we had to learn from, he was just insanely good on it, man. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is so good. So like it was a proper joy to like prep it because just
Yeah.
I just stop playing every now and then, just listen for a bit, and
Yeah.
carry on again. Oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the band were amazing as well in town, so
Yeah.
it was really good to hear, like kind of thing. But I think when I got hold of it, I kind of I'd seen the film and I'd heard the London recording, and the film was more of like, I mean, Ed did some of this kind of stuff as well on the recording, but I think the film was more angled at like the gospely
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got my own faux version of that, so like, so basically, I just kind of did a bit more of that side of things with my iteration, and then when I
Yeah.
got in to the first rehearsal, the supervisor Nick was great. He just said, "Yeah, just play what you want, and I'll tell you if it's shit." Basically, I was like, "Okay, cool, great, all right." So and luckily he approved of most of it. There was some stuff that was horrifically untasteful that he didn't approve of. Um, but yeah, most of the time, again, I've been really lucky. I've never really had anybody tell me to not play something. I
Yeah.
think maybe it's a bit of like knowing the genres again. Maybe it's a bit of that kind of thing creeping in. But for Dreamgirls, it was because it's the show lends itself to being able to have your own identity on it anyway, because it's basically just a massive Motown gig
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like as you heard when you saw it, like it's just chopsy,
Yeah.
and you can be chopsy on that gig.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
quite nice to have the flexibility, and also the MD Simona and the rest of the band like were really great. Like in terms of like Simona especially letting us have flexibility with stuff and letting us play different things, and so
Yeah.
I don't think I ever played that show the same twice. Um, but then there's certain shows I've done where you haven't got that flexibility.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to play it by ear and know what the situation. Especially if you're going into depth. If you're going into depth, it's kind of an unwritten rule that you play it as the other drummer plays it,
Right. 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 Okay.
unless you're told otherwise. With
Yeah.
some shows, there's more flexibility. Like Lion King, I played it a bit different to Matt when I first went into cover for him for Matt Arnold. And then yeah, we now and then when I went in, it was kind of like I had most of it down, but because again, it's the nature of that show means that there's a few bars of like fills and stuff which
Hmm.
don't need to be specific on. There's a few that I stole from Matt basically that were really cool. But like, but apart from that, there was quite a bit of it where you've got a bit of leeway in terms of fills you play and stuff. But grooves, I try not to alter. If I'm decking for somebody, I wouldn't play a groove completely different because it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the odd fill for a bar or two, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. So you just got to read the room a bit and just know what to do. I think. But generally, as a rule, if you dep in, you kind of go and learn what the other guy does
Right.
and
Right.
go
Right. Okay. Yeah.
play.
Because that's what they would have been
Um,
used to as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing because you've got like it's not just about drums. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Lion King, there's like what a 12 piece band on that, and then
Yeah.
you've got like a 30, 40 strong cast
Yeah.
who are all doing stuff. Dreamgirls was the same. So I think whenever people came in for me, um, I think it was the case that I don't think they played all the fills that I played because I said to them, you don't have to play it exactly as I do it, as long as the grooves are solid
Yeah.
and little fills for a bar. Again, because it's like a function gig, like
Yeah.
you can put a thing different and it won't really matter too much.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Whereas if you play a groove completely different, then it will because it just
Yeah.
won't sit. Then you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And I think it'd be really interesting to hear like the amount of different shows you've played have obviously all come under different MDs. And obviously that's a whole thing like in itself.
Yeah.
What like can you talk me through like how you kind of approach the different MDs and if they like specifically ask you to do certain things or if you like I'm just intrigued to know how that would be.
But well, for me, I kind of always approached it from the position of I was always wrong. So if they ever say something, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll change it.
Yeah.
No hassle. It's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of the way that I've always kind of approached things anyway. Like I've always tried to do as much as I can to help rather than
Yeah.
sometimes you've got to kind of, not defend yourself because it's not one of those situations, but
Yeah.
if there's something they're saying that they kind of want, but they because they don't play the instrument, maybe don't know how to convey it as well as somebody who's experienced the instrument would.
Yeah.
Sometimes, well, actually, that probably won't work. Can we try this? That kind of thing's fine. I'd never kind of get my back up and have a go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's just people skills mainly. I think if the
Yeah.
MD asks you to do something, you do it. Basically, they're your boss at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So you kind of obey
Yeah.
basically. But and most of the time, most MDs are lovely and nice. So there's never like any kind of conflict or anything like that going on most of the
Yeah.
time. Um, so yeah, I'd always just say just do what they say, basically, because they're in charge at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
if they say something and it ends up being terrible, then it's their fault. So it's fine.
It's true.
So it's all right.
And
Um,
how do you stay on top of maybe those like creeping imposter syndrome feelings? Because I like
oh
everyone has them. I know like Chris Brown came out a few months ago, was like he has imposter syndrome. He's like one of the most famous pop stars on the planet. Like,
yeah.
how do you kind of how do you mentally stay on top of those?
Um, just drink. No, I'm joking. No. I think it's I don't know. I think nerves are healthy. So like the imposter syndrome thing is very much linked to that. I think it's like if you go in and I've never been one to be cocky anyway, but I think I always have it anyway because it's like I never ever feel like I deserve to be here. I've never ever had that.
Yeah.
I've always tried to kind of get to. There's always a goal, like an aim, like you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean. So
yeah,
regardless of where I am, I'm always trying to like be better.
yeah,
So I think I'm always going to have that personally. So it's just I don't know. It's just kind of a fact of my playing. I think I kind of
yeah,
it's always just there.
yeah,
But I think if you get too bogged down in that, it can affect what you're doing then. So you just
yeah,
kind of it's kind of like dealing with nerves, I suppose. Just you got to just accept that they're a part of the gig, but you
yeah,
have to have them. So just accept it as part of your process rather than
yeah,
that's really deep, doesn't it? But yeah, just
yeah,
accept the nerves as part of as part of what's going on, as part of the adrenaline, as part of the gig, as part of the
yeah,
enjoyment. It's supposed to be there. You know what I mean?
yeah. And have you ever come up against a track or like a show or a section of a show where you're just like, fuck, what am I gonna do with this?
Um, yeah, yes and no. The only one really was on your feet. That tradition one.
Right.
It was just something I wasn't. I'd done a bit of quote unquote Latin stuff when I was at college,
Yeah.
um, but not well enough to go and play with some members of the Miami Sound Machine. So it was like, so when I was in my room in Wednesbury trying to practice this tradition thing, I was like, shit, this is next level. But no, I think yeah, that was probably the main one. There was one bar in Avita that I couldn't get my head around as well for a bit. It just didn't compute for a bit. But then when you just kind of learn to find mental pathways through things, don't you?
Yeah.
And then it just becomes part of your muscle memory, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, it's weird. Like, I think if you interview like other musicians, they'll probably have something really profound to say about that. But with me, it kind of it's always just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Um, I wish I had more of an explanation, but it's just kind of I think it must be the way my brain's wired. It just if something like that comes up, I'm like, oh, okay, oh, okay, fine, I'll work it out. And it's that.
Right.
There's no
Right.
more. There's no more like, oh, this is really hard. It's just
Yeah.
something that I just have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and really hope that doesn't sound big-headed. It's not it's like
No,
I'm trying to say.
I
Or,
completely get it. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like you don't
um,
really think about it like that. You just think about it's just a problem to be solved. I'm sure I'll get around it.
yeah, it's just one of those things. Where it's just something to do.
Yeah.
Um, like and then once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
So that tradition thing, I just kind of I've got about 50 videos of me videoing myself doing it in the practice room.
Right.
Because I just play it and then listen to it and be like, oh shit, and then do it again. Wow, that was a bit less shit. Do it again. Um, I can swear by the way. I've swore quite a lot, haven't I
Oh,
already?
me
So
too. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's
right,
absolutely fine.
good. That's fine then.
Yeah.
I should have asked you.
I like it.
Um,
I like it when it's authentic.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, not in a way as like, oh, I'll be fine with this. It's not that at all. It's just
Yeah.
like it happens and it's like, okay, well that's complicated. Fucking hell. All right.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of shed it for a bit and then it's not as complicated because you've got your head around it.
Well, because the alternative is what you just sit there wallowing in fuck. I'm
Well,
so
yeah,
terrible.
yeah, exactly. Wallowing in your depression. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think yeah, it's just a case of that really. I just because I'm kind of over prepping stuff, I've usually got time to rectify anything like that. So by the time it comes to the show, it's not a worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, until you get there and your adrenaline's going, you're overthinking everything. Like
Yeah.
apart from that, like um, yeah, it's just a case of just if something's complicated, I'll just shed it and shed it and shed it until it's not, basically.
Yeah.
Because again, yeah, with this nature of work, like because it's so exposed in places, especially like a show like um, I don't know, like Lion King. There's a few like really exposed bits on drums and stuff, all frozen, where like it has to be exactly as like it has to
Yeah.
be there, and if it's not, then everyone knows. And because it's such a famous soundtrack as well,
Yeah.
like the 2,000 3,000 people who are watching the theatre will also know. So it's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you can't get away with it in those situations. Like you have to kind of do the work. But
Yeah.
every time I've got in, like I've been really lucky that because you put the prep work in, MDs can tell. They'll say, "Oh, I can tell you put the work in. Like, well
Yeah.
done." You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't, then they wouldn't say anything. So it's quite nice to get a bit of recognition for that. But I think that's just what everybody does. I don't think I'm like a lone case in that. I think if you're on the Depping scene, not that I'd class myself, I've done that a lot. Um, but if you want like that kind of scene where you're Depping in that world, then I think it's kind of a given that you prep
Yeah.
stuff. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you
I
wouldn't
think.
get more work.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing because it's such a niche market as well. Like to do
Yeah.
because like I said at the start, there's so many people who kind of get in touch and be like, right, um, can I come and dep for you? So well, no, you need to sit in on a few shows first. Just meet people, see how it works.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, when they do, they're like, oh Christ, this is not
Yeah.
what I expected.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've had guys like that, like who've never worked in this world before, who've come to have a look, and they're like, how is what's this? Tell me everything. Like,
Yeah.
because it's not really something that gets broadcast, the theatre world.
Yeah.
Um, so not many people get to see what goes on. So that's why things like this are great because it's like you can
Yeah.
actually talk about it.
Yeah. Especially to the depth of how it goes on. I think Panto, ironically, Panto was probably the biggest fucking eye opener ever. You've got your fucking script, then you've got your SPD script for all like the wizard karate chops and all that shit. Then you've got your
Yeah, yeah,
MD, you've got your MD monitor, and then you've got your actual charts, and then you've got your click and playback. Like that was the most like, where the fuck am I looking next? Oh, and then I got to look at the stage to see like when they're doing the karate chops. So I need to be like with them on that.
yeah.
And I was doing that before I knew how to work Fourscore and stuff. So I was like turning pages and shit.
God.
I was like turning 3 pages at once. And then, so I think that those things, I think people think and I don't want to broadly speak on behalf of everyone, but certainly for myself, I don't think I realized the complexity of how actually difficult it is to sit there, follow the MD, follow the click track, follow your own drum, staying on top of your own shit with drums, and then maybe you're moving to an SPD. Like I think that it was a huge eye opener for me as well. So hopefully it can be good for
Yeah,
anyone who's going to listen to this who wants to go into it. It's not just, oh, I've got a bit of reading experience or I've done my grade eight. It's like you're a fucking world away from how it
yeah.
operates, you know?
I've got that a lot with people going, yeah, I've got my grade eight. So well, that's awesome, but like it's a bit more than
Yeah.
that. But
It's
but that's good. They've got to that level. That's awesome. But
yeah,
it's like, okay, well, maybe come and have a look, and then you can
yeah,
see what you know. Because I used to really, like, I still do, like, really enjoy sittings because it's good to kind of, again, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I kind of like helping a bit. It's like,
yeah,
so if somebody's wants to get into that world, it's like, well, come and
yeah,
have a look. Like, you can see what it's like. With me, it's fine.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's like I said, it's a very niche set of skills that you
yeah,
need to be able to do. And I think for a lot of experienced guys, that panto thing is like, it's just some, and with you as well, you would have been like, it is just something that comes naturally. Then you just kind of learn,
yeah,
again, it's muscle memory.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
like, if you've never worked in that world and you're seeing that for the first time, like, right, I've got to think about this and the click and this and watching that screen. It's like, it's just so
yeah.
many things to consider as opposed to just here.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can get away with
Like,
it in function bands and but then again, even the function bands that I play and that you play in the castle gigs that you do, they're like heavy, heavy reading gigs.
oh
Like
yeah,
you have like, and that's the thing. Whenever I get people emailing about ships or whatever, it's like how good do you have to be to read? It's like you have to be really good. Like, of course,
yeah,
like you're reading 250 songs in a week. Like you got four different sets a night, 6 nights a week, all in different genres and styles. Like, of course, you're gonna have to read. And a lot of the times they playing like the live versions, and then they have like stabs and hits and
yeah,
like you do have to, and I think there's no shying away from that. You can get away with it when you play in a pub, and you can, you can have your own maybe way of charting. Like I used to play in a Smiths tribute band when I was like 15, I think, which was
oh great,
amazing. I loved the Smiths. Um, but I had my own way of charting. It wasn't it was just like 8 bars verse, 8 bars, blah blah blah. Looking back now, I must have just remembered what grooves were what. Do you know what I mean? Um,
yeah, yeah.
and you can sort of get away with that on those type of gigs, but I think the gigs that you play on and the cruise ships and everything, like they're just a level above in terms of your reading ability and skill, you know?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Because a lot of people don't see it. They just don't realize that that's
Yeah.
the case. I think it's like a pop gig where you just turn up and
Yeah.
not that there's anything wrong with pop gigs. Pop gigs have got their own set of like
Yeah.
challenges, and they're
Yeah.
some of them are amazing. But like they just assume it's you just turn up with no charts and just play and then go home. Where it's
Yeah.
not like it's not.
Yeah.
There's so much sort of ebbing and flowing that goes on that people in the audience 9 times out of 10 don't even hear.
No.
Because even if it's like a slight tempo change with the MD, you have to be on it. Like you have to just watch like a hawk. Like my first Wicked deck the other day, I spent 99% of it just glued to the screen with the MD. Just because you have to. And the
Yeah.
MD is awesome. Matt's awesome. He's so clear and really, really good. But even though he was still really, really clear and really good, I didn't take my eyes off it for a second. Even if I
Yeah.
was looking at my music, it was like still there in my
Yeah.
peripheral.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like you just have to. Because if they want to, like on the MD, my first MD on a Vita did that quite a bit. He kind of wanted to kind of move stuff and push things on at certain points and stuff. And that show especially just ebbs and flows
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
So many changes in that show.
Yeah.
So you just have to be on it like
Yeah.
all the time,
And I think
watching.
another skill set that potentially people don't practice enough for panto or for theatre is underscoring, where
Oh yeah,
you people have to be able to hear what the people are saying and really kind of hone in on those dynamic ranges. I think before I started with ships, I never really paid much attention to like the dynamic markings on but it makes just such a massive impact, doesn't it?
but also a lot of guys, especially when I found like teaching and stuff. Like if you ask somebody to play, if you ask like a young person to try and play quieter, they automatically slow down.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like we have to do that as well as that
Yeah.
as well as
Yeah,
keeping
yeah,
the
yeah,
tempo going. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just little things like that. But again, like I said, on a pop gig or a rock gig, not pop gig. If you did like a rock band gig, like in a pub or something, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that most of the
No,
time. You don't
no,
have to go down to piano for a vamp and then
no,
come back with
no.
like it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
But
yeah, it's just such
it's important for people to know, isn't it? Because I think, like you said, you would just want them to have an expectation, and hopefully that's something that you know that you can definitely get across. And this is that it is a very high level of musicianship, it's a very high level of reading ability, of technical ability to drop between those dynamic ranges without losing like energy or you know things like that. And it is really good for people to know because I think then you can at least people can set expectations for themselves and say, okay, I need a bit work a bit more on kind of going through my dynamic ranges or you know kind of learning multiple different styles. And that's what I say whenever people email me about the ships, like, what's your advice? It's like you know, just like try and go through every musical genre you possibly can. You know, one night you're playing 60s, one night you're playing 80s, and those are two completely contrasting styles
yeah,
most of the time, you know? Um, and it's only through those it's and unfortunately I've just started to get into golf and I'm kind of like doing the whole novice thing all over
mate.
again. Just like going
Golf
down,
is soul destroying though
oh
when you
my
start.
God, going down the rabbit hole of like trying to learn a thing all over again after like 18 years of playing drums. And Tiger Woods has just said like it's just like quantity, just go and hit as many balls, play on the range, you know, like play with as many different players as you can. There's no real difference in our world, you know, like it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's a really good metaphor actually. But yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? You just got to kind of do as much as you can,
Yeah,
basically. And just, like I said at the start, like just open yourself up to as much work as you possibly can. Like go and sit in with people, go and like watch gigs and speak to musicians. Like just go and just like be in that world, and
yeah,
then you'll see what it takes to kind of be there. Basically,
yeah,
it's just one of those things. You just need to kind of be immersed in it. And if you're not, and you like again with something like theatre, like I said, I felt like there was a glass ceiling there for years because I never had my breakthrough.
yeah,
Um, and then well until the Drifters gig and some recording stuff I had come in, it was one of those things where it was just amateur stuff and functions.
yeah,
But then once it happens, if you've got that skill set already and you do a good job, and also you're a people person as well. Like you've got
yeah,
to be nice to tour with.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like if you're not, you won't get work because that's a
yeah,
big part of the deal as well. That I think gets overlooked. Like you can be as good a player as you want, but if you turn up with like an ego and you're a bit of an arsehole, you just
yeah,
people won't want to tour with you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I've managed to kind of hide that last one for quite a bit of what I've been on tour. Um,
I
but yeah,
don't
like it's
believe
one of
that
those
for a
things.
second.
Oh mate, I don't know. I can be a pretty arseholey person. But yeah, yeah, I think yeah, it's just yeah. There's so many little kind of caveats and things to everything I'm saying. But yeah, like on the whole, it's just having that skill set and just being
Yeah,
able to kind of have knowledge of styles, be able to follow an MD, be able to read, be able to sit as well and groove because I'm
yeah,
playing to a click. If you can groove to a click, like that's fine because there's some really really good players about. So if you can't do it and it's not sitting right, then there's a lot of other really good players who can. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's one of those things where it just needs to sit properly as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
But again, this all stuff you pick up if you just start trying to
yeah,
just sit in and just see people doing the work.
yeah,
There's no better way to learn than just watching the people doing the work, doing the work.
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And I read when I was out on the ships, I would listen to a lot of audiobooks, and one of the ones I did was Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, which I absolutely loved. And
Oh, cool.
he interviewed a lot of people for that book. And two of the questions that he asked, which I really loved, one of them was, "What album do you recommend to everyone that you know?"
Oh, Christ. Uh, oh God.
It's such a
Yeah,
hard question, isn't it?
it is. I've got like my nostalgia albums, and then I've got my musical theatre albums, and then
You
I've
have
got
one
my
that like anytime someone says, "Oh, have you got like what's your favorite?" Like, tell me what your favorite one is.
oh man. Uh,
Well, you can do one
okay,
musical theatre and one
okay,
outside.
musical theatre. I'd say the Broadway recording of Heathers.
Right.
That's pretty awesome. The London one's great as well, but I prefer the Broadway one because it was the original one.
Yeah.
It was really cool. That's got pretty much everything in it. That's a
Yeah.
great one. And it's a really good show as well. And then, oh man, okay, Limp Bizkit, Chocolate Starfish. It's probably one of my like, man, that was my. I played the crap out of that album when I was like 14. Like John Otto taught me how to play drums, basically, essentially.
And the other one was the same thing, just with a book. Do you have a book that you recommend to everyone?
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've got quite a varied reading list, but I'd say I don't know anything by oh, in fact, a really good one drumming wise is The Art of Practice, but I've forgotten the name of the author. It's escaped me. Oh my god! One second. I'm gonna look this up because it's worth looking up. Let me find it really quickly because it's basically just a book on how to practice.
It's not Benny Greb, is it?
No, no, it's not a drummer. He's a keys player from New York. Who
Oh,
wrote
is it the art?
the art. I think it's The Art of Practice or something
Something like
along
that,
those.
isn't it? I did it on audiobook. I know exactly the one you're on about. It's got an orange cover.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, it's incredible. Because it just makes you approach everything to complete, and it really helps with like again
It's
nerves
like
don't ever.
mindful practice, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. I
Yeah.
mean, there's one thing that he said in there, which like at the time when I read it, again, like I get nervous like everybody else does, but
Yeah.
it kind of helps with stuff. And it's like he basically said a good way to deal with that is imagine that you're the person looking over the shoulder of you playing that show.
Yeah.
So imagine yourself watching yourself playing it as opposed
Yeah.
to you playing the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because
honestly,
you
like,
take the emotion out of it, don't you?
yeah, because then you're watching somebody else fail. It's like
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, that was one of the things that there was like, oh shit, like, that's actually really good advice.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it called? I think it's is it The Art of Practice? The Art of Practice. I don't think it's that one. No, it's not that one.
I know exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, that's gonna bug me. I'll email you. I have to update it
I'll put it
in the
at the
caption.
end. I'll put it at the.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'd say that one. That one's incredible. But then
Yeah.
yeah, I really like science fictiony stuff and other stuff as well.
I'm just
Some really
finishing Dune for the first.
oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, which
Oh
has been
man,
really great actually.
I haven't read that one.
Oh, it's
But
good.
I've been reading a lot of this guy called Luke Smitherd. He's like an unpublished author
Okay.
who wrote. He's got this series of books called like the Stone Man. It's like this stone bloke appears in Coventry and then just walks through things to get to like a certain point, and it's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
Um, sounds really nerdy though when I say it out loud, but it's really like it's really good. He got
I
me
think
through a lot of gigs.
mine is probably the one I would I got a few that I recommend. I really like the kind of existentialism ones. I really love that shit. I find it kind of gives you a good grounding and kind of a perspective on, you know, the fragility of life, shall we say. So my
Man,
one is probably the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. That's a really, really good one. He's like a serial angel investor, but he's like really wise and
oh cool.
he has like three breakdowns, like mind, body, and spirit, I think, and he speaks about them all. It's really, really good. And Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is another one that I always tell people.
Oh cool.
Really like that one. Um, so yeah, lastly, thank you so much for agreeing to this, mate. Actually, you've been so great and
Oh,
so much good information for people that actually want to get into the theatre touring world. So to end it off nicely, just your last piece of advice. I know we've done loads actually in this podcast, but if you had an email or a question that said, "Can you just tell me how, how can I do it?"
yeah. So I think to bullet point it, I'd kind of say just try and expose yourself to as many genres as you possibly can. One, read music. Two, I'm just going to slightly caveat that before we finish because there's a lot of stuff I see online of people who say like a lot of drummers are like, oh, I don't like people who read because it's not musical. I prefer to play by ear. And it's like it just annoys me because it's not really an argument. Like you should be able to play
Yeah.
by ear anyway as a
Yeah.
given. Like they're not either or.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Um, but yeah, so basically, just being able to read is a massive skill. Just playing as many kind of different ensembles as you can. If you've got an opportunity to go, especially if you read, well, you need to read really, but just join a brass band or a wind band or just some kind or an orchestra, just some kind of ensemble that isn't necessarily in your comfort zone. So you can get used to following a stick, like a conducting stick
Yeah.
MD, and you can just get used to playing with different ensembles because ensembles play like respond in different ways. So like brass bands, for example, some of them play so far behind the beat that you're
Yeah.
interpreting the conductor in a completely different place. Like I did an orchestral gig the other day. We did it's with the Heritage Orchestra. We did an arena tour of Home Alone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But it's the first thing I'd done like that, so it was really nice. Just got to watch a film and play some music for a bit. It was great. Um, but it was awesome. The orchestra were great, and then that was another one where it was like the conductor was really clear, but you're at a drum kit with no monitoring at the back of like a 50-piece, 60-piece orchestra.
Yeah.
So again, you need to play in a certain way. I mean, I was only on drums for one number in the show. The rest of it was like orchestral percussion, like bass
Right.
drum, triangle. So being able to play with different conductors and interpret the beats in the correct ways, depending on that genre, helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, expose yourself to styles, being able to follow an MD, being able to read, and being able to play to a click. I'd say pretty big skills. And
Yeah.
this is negating the fact that you need to be able to play competently. That's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
given.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'd say, yeah, being able to follow an MD, being able to play in loads of different styles, being able to play to a click, and being able to read. I'd say are the four kind of big skills you need. But obviously, they're your starting points.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of explore everything that comes with that to be able to kind of do this kind of thing, I think.
And don't be an
Definitely.
arsehole.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I'm failing. But yeah, definitely don't be an asshole
Yeah.
if you can help it.
Well, thank you so much, mate. It's been absolutely amazing. I've loved it. It's just been nice for a catch up, to be honest.
Yeah, man.
Obviously I haven't seen you in a while. But let me know. Are you touring with Bangor Nation?
No, so at the minute it's just a run. We're on for a month at the Alex in Birmingham. If you happen to be near Birmingham and you want to come and have a look, just let me know.
All right, I will do.
But yeah, it's we're there until the Christ 17th February, 16th or 17th. No, 16th or 17th of March. We're
Yeah.
there. So we did the first preview last night. And then yeah, we're back in again. We did a day off today, and then we're back in tomorrow. And then it's 8 shows a week then until
Oh, amazing.
yeah, it's pretty good. And it's a lovely theatre as well. The techs are great, everyone's lovely there.
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
it's brand new, they've been rewriting everything. So it's been really cool to be involved. I've never been involved that early on in a process before where it's
Yeah.
brand new.
Yeah.
Um,
But you're
so it's
back and
really
forth to London a lot, and my brother lives there, and I'm trying to get back up there to see if I can maybe sit in some shows and just try and meet some people. So I will, well, when you're there, or whenever I'm there, I tend to drop you a message anyway just to see if you're on one of the shows. So
yeah,
I'm sure that we will get together at some point.
yeah, man. Well, I'll see you soon then.
Yes, keep in touch, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thanks,
Speak
man.
to
See
you
you soon.
soon. Bye, bro.